I had just walked out of a marble lobby in Munich, fresh off signing the biggest contract of my career, when I checked my phone. The subject line of the email from my mother stopped me cold. The house is sold. For a moment, I just stood there in disbelief, the noise of the city fading around me. That house, my house, wasn't just bricks and drywall. It was 5 years of mortgage payments, renovation weekends, sleepless nights comparing insurance plans. I had paid for every inch of it. But the deed, it was in my parents' name. Just until you're more settled, they'd said. I was 35 now, far from unsettled. My name is Jessica Cole, and while I'd been managing billion-dollar deals and rescuing failing corporations across Europe, my own parents decided, without a single call, that they needed liquidity. My mother's email was short and unapologetic. We got a better offer than your down payment, so we accepted. It's all signed. That was it. No discussion, no warning, just gone. When I called, she answered cheerfully, like she was telling me the weather. "Isn't that great news?" she chirped. I could hardly keep my voice steady. All I got in return was a sigh and a flippant remark about how I was always busy with my little consulting job. What they didn't realize was that their so-called little job had just bought them out. But they'd learn soon enough. What they took from me wasn't just a house. It was the last thread of trust I had in them. To my family, I was just the daughter with a side hustle in Switzerland. They saw my work as something quaint, unimportant, temporary. What they didn't know was that for the last 11 years, I had been quietly building one of the most aggressive and successful corporate restructuring firms in Europe. My name is Jessica Cole, and while they were patting my brother on the back for keeping their struggling business afloat, I was orchestrating international turnarounds, advising governments, and negotiating financial recoveries worth hundreds of millions. To the outside world, I ran a boutique advisory company in Zurich. But behind the curtain, I was the CEO of Orion Equity Group, a multinational acquisition firm specializing in distressed assets. We didn't just offer advice, we took over, restructured, and turned companies into efficient, profitable machines. My firm operated in silence under a network of shell corporations, each move calculated years in advance. While my parents were scrambling to keep their company, Cole and Mason Logistics, from collapsing, I was quietly buying up their unpaid debts. Every overdue invoice, every missed loan payment, every creditor who gave up on them, it all flowed through intermediaries, ultimately landing in my control. I watched from a distance as the cracks in their empire widened, but I never stepped in. Not when they ignored my early business ideas, not when they refused to co-sign my student loans, not even when they sold my house behind my back. You see, for them, I was never the one to bet on. That role was saved for my brother Daniel, the golden child, the future CEO. He was COO by 30 and completely out of his depth, but they never saw it. They dismissed my choices, my education, and every success I earned as nothing more than a hobby. While I worked in silence, they clung to outdated strategies and pride, all while their company bled dry. But I had a plan. I wasn't going to shout argue or plead for recognition. I was going to buy them out from underneath their feet and let the truth reveal itself at just the right moment. For 18 months, I built a quiet storm. My team acquired everything related to their business through subsidiaries, including their largest suppliers, and even the development firm that purchased the house they sold. I moved piece by piece until Orion Equity owned 78% of Cole and Mason. By the time they realized someone had absorbed nearly all their assets, it was too late. When the audit notice landed on their desks, they had no idea it was from me. They were told the CEO of their new parent company would be attending the next board meeting. They likely expected an old man in a gray suit. What they got instead was the daughter they had overlooked walking through the same doors where I was once told I'd never understand real business. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't throw accusations. I simply placed the documents on the table and introduced myself properly, the CEO of Orion Equity. The same side hustle they laughed about was now the reason they'd lost their company. That moment, the look in their eyes wasn't just about power. It was about justice. They had underestimated the wrong daughter. And while they were too busy propping up a legacy built on favoritism and pride, I had quietly built something real, something enduring. I didn't just take back what they stole. I became everything they said I couldn't. And now I was the one calling the shots. From the outside, it looked like a routine acquisition, another struggling company being absorbed by a larger firm. But for me, it was the final move in an 18-month game of strategy, silence, and payback. What my parents didn't know was that while they were busy selling my home and scoffing at my little consultancy, I had been orchestrating the complete takeover of their company, Cole and Mason Logistics, from behind the scenes. Every decision I made, every step I took, was designed to lead to this moment. It started subtly. I began purchasing small bits of their unpaid debt through various shell corporations. They didn't even flinch when a few vendor contracts changed hands. When one of their key lenders shifted terms, they chalked it up to bad timing. They had no idea I was behind it all. My name is Jessica Cole, and I wasn't just a consultant in Zurich. I was the CEO of Orion Equity Group, a firm known for acquiring and transforming distressed companies across Europe. My specialty wasn't just corporate rescue, it was silent domination. I knew exactly how to make the numbers work in my favor, and I used every ounce of that expertise to buy out the business my parents had chosen over me, time and time again. While I worked tirelessly in boardrooms from Berlin to Geneva, my parents kept betting everything on my brother Daniel, the COO of their failing logistics empire. They never saw the storm coming, not even when the cracks in their operations deepened. They didn't see it when their suppliers started quietly pulling away. They certainly didn't see it when I bought the holding company that purchased the home they sold out from under me. By the time the board of directors was notified of the new majority stakeholder, I already controlled 78% of Cole & Mason's shares, along with most of their outstanding liabilities. In corporate terms, that meant I didn't just own the company, I was the company. And the most poetic part, they had been too busy scrambling to save themselves to notice the name on the acquisition documents until it was far too late. They sold my house without asking, took my childhood savings to cover payroll without ever telling me, and brushed off my education and achievements like they were side projects. But I didn't fight them back with yelling or lawsuits. I used the same words they always threw in my face. Business is business, so I made it business. And when the moment finally came, I walked into their boardroom, not as the daughter they once dismissed, but as their new boss. Calm, composed, and utterly in control, I laid the papers on the table and introduced myself as the CEO of Orion Equity. The silence in that room was deafening. My father's face drained of color, my mother's wine glass shattered on the floor, and Daniel looked like he'd seen a ghost. That's when they realized the unknown firm that had swept in to take their legacy wasn't some faceless corporation. It was me. The takeover wasn't just about reclaiming a business or a house. It was about showing them who I really was and what I had become in the shadows of their doubt. They had sacrificed everything, including me, for the sake of a crumbling company. And now, the very thing they gave everything to protect belonged to the daughter they never believed in. I didn't need revenge. I had results. The elevator ride to the top floor felt like the longest 30 seconds of my life. As I watched the numbers light up one by one, my mind replayed everything, every slight, every moment of dismissal, every sacrifice I had made while my family mocked my ambition. But I wasn't nervous. I wasn't even angry anymore. I was ready. After 18 months of carefully planned acquisitions and strategic silence, today was the day I took control, not just of a company, but of the story they'd written me out of. When the doors opened, I stepped into the familiar hallway of Cole & Mason Logistics, the company my parents had spent decades building and using as an excuse to justify every betrayal. It was the same hallway I used to walk as a teenager, delivering coffee to meetings and overhearing conversations I wasn't supposed to. But now I was walking back in, not as their daughter, but as their new CEO. I paused just outside the boardroom. Inside, I heard my father's voice tense and agitated. "This has to be a mistake," he said. "An unknown firm can't just sweep in and buy our company." My brother Daniel, ever the loyal second in command, replied, "I've checked it 3 times. Orion Equity owns 78% of our shares. We're legally obligated to meet their CEO today." My mother tried to soothe the room, but there was a crack of anxiety in her voice. "We've always landed on our feet," she said. That's when I opened the door. They all looked up. My father scowled. "Jessica, this meeting is for board members only. Whatever tantrum you're having about the house can wait." I smiled politely and walked in, setting my leather briefcase on the table with a quiet click. "I'm not here about the house," I said evenly. "I'm right on time." "The CEO of Orion Equity is scheduled to meet with you at 10 a.m. Daniel frowned. "Yes, but she's not." "She is," I interrupted, pulling out the controlling interest documents and placing them on the table. "I'm the CEO." For a moment, no one said a word. My mother's wine glass slipped from her hand and shattered. My father's face went white. Daniel stared at me like I'd grown another head. "You can't be," he whispered. "You run a consulting firm." "I do." I nodded. "And I also built an acquisition empire under your noses. You thought I was invisible, but I was simply quiet. You called me a disappointment, but I was building something real." I laid the rest of the paperwork in front of them. "As of this morning, Orion Equity holds majority ownership of Cole & Mason, including controlling board seats. I'm now your superior." Their reactions ranged from disbelief to outrage. But I didn't flinch. I reminded them of every moment they had dismissed me, from my denied student loan to the day they sold my home without a single phone call. Then I delivered the final blow. Effective immediately. "Daniel, you're relieved of your duties as COO. Dad, you're stepping down as CEO. Mom, your position as head of communications is no longer required. You're firing us." Daniel gasped. "No," I said coolly. "I'm offering you the same opportunity you gave me a chance to earn your place." They could either accept junior-level positions or clean out their offices by 500 p.m. That was their choice, just like they'd made choices without me for decades. I turned to the board, who watched with barely disguised approval. They had suffered under my family's arrogance for years. Today they were witnessing the beginning of something new, and as I walked out of that boardroom, I didn't just take my seat at the head of the table. I took back my power, quietly, completely, without permission. I didn't fire them out of spite. I didn't need to scream or slam doors. I simply handed them the same cold professionalism they'd taught me growing up. Business is business. That's what they always said, right? When they sold my childhood home behind my back, when they emptied my college savings to cover payroll, when they chose my brother Daniel to lead the company I wasn't even allowed to speak about at the dinner table. They told me it was just business, so I returned the favor. As I stood at the head of the boardroom table in Cole & Mason Logistics, the company my parents built and used to define their worth, I looked them both in the eyes, my mother trembling, my father pale, and my brother too stunned to speak, and told them they were being relieved of their positions, effective immediately. I didn't yell. I didn't gloat. I simply laid out the new structure. Daniel was welcome to apply for an entry-level job in accounts receivable. My father could try door-to-door sales in our new regional expansion. And my mother, I suggested the front desk, could use a receptionist with a warm smile and a good memory. I even said it with a straight face. They were horrified. My mother gasped and clutched her chest. My father muttered something about betrayal. Daniel looked like a child whose toys had just been taken away. "You're firing your own family," he stammered. "No," I said calmly. "I'm giving you the same thing you gave me a chance to earn your place. If you're as talented as you claim, you'll rise. If not, you'll finally understand what it felt like to be ignored, passed over, and dismissed." They had believed for so long that I was the failure, that I was the one who needed to be more realistic. But I had built my success with that same rejection as fuel. And when they sold my house without even telling me I didn't break, I planned. Now I owned 78% of Cole and Mason. I had taken over their debt, their board, their future. I even bought back the development company that purchased my house. By morning, the deed would be back in my name. But this takeover wasn't just about real estate or revenge. It was about restoration, about showing them and everyone who ever doubted me that quiet strength can move mountains. I'd missed birthdays to answer phones for them. I'd given up vacations to do just one more thing for the company they never let me be part of. They asked me to sacrifice, and I did, again and again. And when I finally carved out my own path, they dismissed it as a side gig. But that side gig had just bought out everything they had ever owned. As I gathered my documents and turned to leave the boardroom, I offered them one final truth. "You always said, business is business. Well, this is mine now." Behind me, I heard the muffled sounds of disbelief, the unraveling of the illusion they had wrapped themselves in for decades. For the first time in my life, their noise didn't reach me. They could no longer define me, diminish me, or control the narrative. I walked out, not just with their company, but with my dignity fully restored. And I never looked back. They thought selling my house was just a financial decision, just another line item to help patch up the bleeding balance sheets of their failing company, Cole & Mason Logistics. To them, it wasn't personal. To me, it was everything. The home in question wasn't just a piece of property. It was 5 years of my life. I'd covered every mortgage payment, funded every renovation, paid for every repair. Sure, the deed was in my parents' name, but only because they insisted. "Just until you're more settled," my mom had said. I was 35, running international financial restructures across Europe, but still somehow not settled enough in their eyes. So while I was overseas finalizing a multi-million-dollar deal, they sold it. No warning, no discussion. I got the news in an email. "We accepted a better offer. The deal's done." Just like that. I should have been furious. Instead, I stayed quiet. Because by that point, I already owned the company that bought the development firm that purchased the house. They didn't know that, of course. As far as my parents were concerned, I was still the daughter with a little job in Zurich. They had no idea I was the CEO of Orion Equity Group, a multinational acquisition firm that specialized in absorbing distressed assets, and their company was one of them. While they sold my house to keep their business above water, I was behind the scenes buying up every piece of their debt. And the house. That was just the beginning. It was poetic in a way. They had taken my home to save their company, and I'd taken their company and the home without raising my voice or making a single threat. That's the thing about being underestimated for too long. eventually it becomes your greatest advantage. The day I reclaimed the house was quiet and efficient. I called my real estate lawyer, Clara, and said I'd like to list a property, Wrenhurst Lane. Yes, the one recently sold by the Cole family. There was a pause. Don't worry, I added. I own it now. Bought the holding company last week. Just like that, it was mine again. The house, they took the space. They said I'd outgrown the symbol of all my independence. They would wake up the next morning and realize it belonged to me after all. Not because I begged for it, but because I earned it. I didn't need to move back into that house. I had already upgraded to a penthouse overlooking the Thames. But taking it back wasn't about square footage or curb appeal. It was about reclaiming the respect, the agency, and the power they had tried to strip away with one impulsive sale. That house represented everything they refused to see in me: commitment, resilience, and success. So I made sure the deed came back into my name. No family discount, no emotion, just business. Because sometimes the greatest closure isn't confrontation. It's simply standing tall with the keys to everything they said you'd never have and smiling as you walk through the door. They may have thought they'd sold the house, but in truth, they gave me the perfect chance to show them who really held the power. And this time, it wasn't up for sale. I didn't just reclaim a company or a house, I reclaimed myself. For years, I was the daughter they overlooked, the one who wasn't built for business, the one told to marry well, while my brother was handed the keys to the company. I worked in silence, building something powerful while they weren't looking. And in the end, I walked into the very boardroom where I was once dismissed and took my rightful place at the head of the table. The victory wasn't loud. It was quiet, sharp, and absolute. I didn't need to prove them wrong with words. I did it with results. And maybe the sweetest moment wasn't watching their faces. When I revealed I was their boss, it was walking out with my head high, knowing they could no longer touch what I had built. If you've ever been underestimated, overlooked, or told you're not enough, remember this. You don't need their approval to become extraordinary. Sometimes the best thing you can do is keep going in silence. Let them talk. Let them laugh. And let your success speak for you. The world may not see your potential right away, but that doesn't mean it's not there. Work hard, stay focused, be patient. And when your moment comes, don't just walk into the room, own it. If this story touched your heart, I'd love to hear yours. Have you ever been underestimated by someone close to you? Share your experience in the comments below. Let's lift each other up. And if you believe in quiet strength and real comeback stories, subscribe to this channel. Your support means the world, and together we're building a space for people who rise not out of revenge, but with purpose,